Well, I also just
Welcome to Beyond Broth Summit, Nurturing a New World from Chaos to Goodness. I'm Grayce Ventura, founder and creator of Beyond Broth. Joining us today is a dear friend, sister, and health and lifestyle expert, Kristin Grayce McGary. Kristin is a stunning woman. And how I first met her was through craniosacral work, as I have done, and she has been involved with for many years, long time, as well as an acupuncturist. And when I met her, it was this kind of immediate recognition of a heart. It was really a heart. And you could just feel it coming right through. And that's what really struck me when I met her and knew that I wanted to know this human. That if I already had, which I probably already have, but she's a familiar, so she's a sister. First of all, we're discussing the topic, finding your medicine within the pain. And such powerful tools to have, especially during challenging times. She's an internationally recognized author and speaker, and she is an authority on autoimmunity, functional blood chemistry analysis, thyroid and gut health, alleviating pain, family wellness, extreme exhaustion, resolving blocks to healing, and using food as medicine. Share about how finding your medicine within the pain, what that even means, because for most people, pain, there's that resistance and wanting not to feel it. And this, to me, talks about the gift of it.
Well, first, Grayce, thank you so much for having me. And it's been such a beautiful reunion of our souls in this life. And I had a similar kind of recognition and feeling about you. So it's really beautiful to be able to use our connection in this way to help other people. And I love your vision of this summit and all of us collaborating together to really raise consciousness and the vibration of the planet during these very interesting times. So thank you for putting this all together. I understand the kind of work and the dedication and commitment and love that it takes to create something like this. So thank you.
Truly my pleasure. Especially because here I get to have this conversation with you and hear you and your passion and your service. What can you share about your point of view of how pain is can be our medicine?
Well, I'd like to start with a story about myself. And when I was younger, I had a very serious pain disorder. I was undiagnosed for a long time, and then eventually a rheumatologist diagnosed me with fibromyalgia. And I had dozens of trigger point pain points and TMJ issues and headaches and migraines and gas and bloating, and I would get razor blades in my stomach and just want to die. And my whole body hurt. I would wake up feeling like I had been run over by a Mack truck.
Wow.
And so I'm not a stranger to pain.
Mm-hmm. How old were you, by the way?
I was 20.
Okay.
21.
Okay.
And it kind of started around 19, but it was very subtle, and then it amped up 20 and 21. I had been a competitive bodybuilder and an endurance athlete and a vegan and then vegetarian for many years, and thought I was doing all the right things.
Mm-hmm.
And then my body started speaking to me very, very loudly through symptoms of pain. And I believe pain is a language of the body and the soul. And it's a means of communication. And I didn't understand that then. Instead, I wanted to get rid of it. I wanted to make it go away. I went from doctor to doctor looking for answers. What's going on in me and how do I get rid of this? And so because I've gone through that and then have found different vantage points of that pain to use it instead as my medicine, as medicine for the awakening of my soul, as medicine to better understand what my physical body, my biochemistry was asking for, as well as what my soul was asking for. And it also showed me how I had locked emotions and trauma into my tissues, that this cell memory had been contained. I had unfinished business, basically. And so in this journey of pain and of discovering the biochemical imbalances, discovering what had been suppressed inside my tissues, discovering that my soul wasn't being nourished or listened to, helped me turn the pain that I was pushing away into a tool to awaken and reharmonize, rebalance, and remember my higher self. And because of what's going on in the world today and the last 23 plus years of practice and experience working with people with pain, I feel this is a really important topic to dive into. And it's the topic of my 4th book, and which isn't out yet. And the way we can use pain as our medicine is also individual and important to look at it from several different vantage points to best understand what is right for you. And we'll dive into more of that, but I'm curious if you have more questions.
I understand how that would be, but the capacity to be able to go to that place and step out of it long enough to be able to see and not, to be able to witness it. So do you have certain ways that you guide people into that place?
I do, depending on that person.
Uh-huh.
I do. And I think this is a really important piece that you're bringing up, this piece around capacity.
Uh-huh. And
have we developed a capacity to look inside in different ways and to watch ourselves, to look at our mind, and the capacity to shift from a victim mentality to one of gratitude that this is actually a gift. And so for people who haven't built that capacity yet, I help them do that. And it doesn't have to take a long time. I give them very practical tools to start to exercise the capacity muscles that are needed for what's going on with them. And this then builds a new kind of resiliency, because pain can really drain. It can drain us. Yes, it can wear us down physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually,
yes,
relationally. How we relate to the world around us, to the people in our world, to the situation of our life. It can just wear us down. And it doesn't have to be only physical pain. This is so important. Yes, physical pain does this. And if people have had trauma or maybe they have a diagnosis of complex PTSD, this is a kind of pain that may seem invisible. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to acknowledge and touch on this, because it can be disguised. You know, if we have a broken arm or we're in a wheelchair, it's kind of obvious we got something going on. But if we have a deep emotional pain or a spiritual pain, then it's not obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And we may or may not even have the language or the understanding of how to explain it and how to ask for what we need in order to heal. And so there's a different approach to that kind of pain, because it can be a little more hidden. And sometimes, even though people are living in pain, it's like water to the fish. They don't even realize that the reason that they're yelling and snapping at all their loved ones and crabby and can't sleep is because they have this deep emotional pain that hasn't been loved and hasn't been received and dealt with and listened to yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so there can be some different approaches that can work for different kinds of pain, and how that's being expressed through someone's ecosystem of their being, not just this one linear understanding of a human, but there's more.
So when you say ecosystem, why don't you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's a way in which I believe is the most honorable way of working with a patient. So from my perspective, yes, I might want to see a functional blood chemistry lab on them. Yes, I might want to take I do want to take a great history on that person. Yes, I want to feel them under my hands. I want to feel their energy. I want to feel their pulses. I want to feel their craniosacral rhythm. I want to feel how their tissue moves. I want to see how they hold their structure, their body. What are they showing me just through how they stand or how they walk? What are they showing me through how they speak, the words they choose, the cadence of their voice, where their eyes go? Yes, I want to learn about what they're eating, how they're eating, when they're eating. And I want to learn about their relationships. Do they eat alone? Are they in partnership? Do they have children? Do they have animals? So I'm touching on all these different parts of a person's being, their ecosystem. What are their ancestors like? Are they carrying anything for their ancestors? What, even from a homeopathic perspective, do they have any particular miasms that might be activated, which connect to like ancestral imprints of different kinds of disease patterns? It doesn't mean they have that disease, but they might have patterns of it that are working in their life and may be blocking them from really thriving. So these are all pieces of someone's ecosystem. Where do they live? Do they live under a cell phone tower? Do they live in a skyscraper, in a penthouse? Do they live near nature? Do they exercise? Do they drink water? This is all part of someone's ecosystem. And I think it's most honorable to look at the person through all these different lenses so that I get a more comprehensive view. And from there, I believe I have adequate information from all of my 12 senses, not just 5, but 12 senses, to then best guide that person to remembering and awakening to their higher selves and shifting their physical biochemistry, which might be called healing. But the word healing kind of has this implication that you're not already healthy and you're broken somehow. And so you got to do something to get healthy. So I'm still playing with this word, and sometimes I feel really good and I've given it some different meaning and I can carry that. And then other times I'm like, nah, it's still evolving. There's still this attitude, whereas if I'm unhealthy, then I'm broken and I need to get fixed. And people often look outside of themselves to get fixed. And we do this with pain. We're often looking outside. Can we pop a pill to take the edge off? Can we get an injection for the migraine? Can we? And this is not necessarily a bad strategy. It's just an incomplete strategy.
Yes. So on that note, please say more about, you're just leading me right in, that incomplete, it reminds me of what you said before about pain being disguised. How do you address that as the gift,
So you mean like the unfinished business, like the cell memory part, as being this like incomplete, not fully resolved something, often from your past. And sometimes it can also be from other lifetimes for people that fits their paradigm, or it could be from ancestors and we're carrying it in this life. So that unfinished business, one of the first things is to discover if that's there and what it is.
Right.
And I consider that a block to healing, which is the topic of my third book, which isn't out yet, but it's complete. And there are these different blocks to healing, and pain in itself can be a block to healing, but there can also be blocks to healing that cause pain. And this unfinished business is one of them. And I'll just use trauma as an example. And I'm connecting to see which patient or which story wants to come through around trauma. Okay, so I'll share one that, Grayce, you can relate to as a cranial sacral therapist. For myself, I like to get vulnerable and share some personal details, and I do write about this in one of the books. So I was in a really bad car accident when I was 16. I was speeding, and I was speeding and listening to music very, very early in the morning on my drive to high school, which was an hour drive because we lived out in the country on these dirt roads, and I was on a paved road. I had just left the dirt road, but this paved road, it was all desert. I was living in Tucson, Arizona, and this paved road had tons of rocks and gravel on the sides, the edges, and it was very, very windy, and I was a little bit late, and I was 16, and so I was speeding, and my tire caught this gravel, and it scared me, and I overcorrected, and I crossed the road, went up an embankment, lost control, and I rolled my car 3 times and landed upside down and was trapped for a while, and then found a way out, and I survived, and I dropped to my knees and I prayed, and I was like, oh my God, wow, thank you, I survived this, and this is going to be a lesson. Mm-hmm. And at 16 I knew that, I could feel it. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand it yet. And there was this one spot, so I wasn't really injured. I might have had a little concussion. I had a slight hearing loss in one of my ears from that, and done a lot of work around it. But there was this one spot in my back that always bugged me. It was like this tweak, and it was painful. It would feel like it was out. It was kind of irritating, but it was mild. It was like a 3 out of 10. It wasn't super bad. And so I'm in a cranial sacral therapy class learning this technique probably 22, 23 years ago. And it was a multiple hands-on class. So there were 2 other students on me and a TA who was a professional cranial sacral therapist, body worker. So I had 3 sets of hands on my body. And my physical body started to go through the car accident. I had this cell memory, this trauma from this car accident locked in my back. And although it was only a 3 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10, it was still a block to my healing. And with the expertise and the careful listening to my body and my soul, my cranial sacral rhythm, my body literally went through this car accident, and I got to this one point, and someone knew in that moment to put their hand right on the spot in my back, which was invisible to everyone, except it wasn't. And in that moment, I just cried. And it didn't have content.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a specific emotion, but that cell memory had been stuck in my back and it got released. And then that nagging little like, owie, ooh, it's out, gone. Gone. And so that's an example of how sometimes we're not even aware that things are locked in the tissue. That this was a block to me in many ways, psychosomatically, structurally, how I am in alignment in my life with my spine being aligned, but also in how I was holding the emotions of that trauma. I didn't have a great support system, although my parents were doing their very best and they were supportive of that accident. I didn't, get punished or anything, but I didn't have a lot of avenues to really clear it in a different way, and I needed to move it through my tissue. So that's one example of how something can get locked in and then be released, and you may have not even known it. And I just thought of another great story. I mean, I have lots of stories about examples of people, even from birth trauma.
Yeah.
That something happened at birth. I'm thinking of a gentleman, and I didn't know his history. I didn't know his birth history, but my hands were going to his throat. He was turning blue on the table as a 46-year-old adult. And I am in my mind seeing the umbilical cord wrapped around an infant, and his breathing is changing, and he says he feels afraid. And he says he feels like he's going to die, but he doesn't know why. And I make sure it's okay to move forward in the session. And he says, absolutely, thank you for being with me. And his tissue released the trauma of that cord being around his neck. He took a big breath, his color came back, his breathing changed. And he was like, whoa, what was that? And I said, well, what was that to you?
Right.
What did that remind you of? And he says, the first thought is that my mom told me the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. And he was never able, he hadn't disclosed this till the next day when he ran to me, so excited. We were in a retreat. He ran to me so excited. He said, Kristin, Grayce, you won't believe it. I have never in my life been able to successfully swallow a pill, ever.
Wow.
He said, and I even have trouble swallowing food. He said, and for the first time in my life this morning, I swallowed pills that my wife gave me, and I had breakfast without any trouble swallowing. So there's another quick example of how things can get locked in the tissue.
Yes.
And he had chronic pain all over his body. And this had been a block to his body doing what it's designed to do, which is heal and rebalance and regenerate.
Yes. Beautiful. Oh, God. Love that. Love it. That's why it's just so stunning how that pain is a gift. How it gives us that incredible gift. So
I think the shift in our consciousness around it is so essential. And so for people listening, I want to offer that I understand pain, and it can be so overwhelming. And yet, if we can use our breath and we can use the power of our consciousness to have a dialogue with the pain, to have a dialogue with the part of our body that has the pain, to listen in a new way with new ears, with curiosity, instead of pushing away, but we invite it. We say, no, pain, I want to make you my best friend. I want to speak with you. I want to listen to you in a different way. Teach me. Teach me how to listen to what you're showing me I need. What is in my highest good? And when we shift our awareness and we start to work with pain in this way and befriend it and welcome it and give it space and give it a little bit of time in our conscious awareness, things really start to shift.
Sensation is this, oh, it's there. Doesn't have to be a story about it. It's just there. Because if I go in a story, I get taken out into another place instead of just experiencing sensation.
Yes, I think this is a beautiful point. Yes, and there is this continuum of physical pain. It can just be this pressure, and then it can be like, I'm in bed with a migraine. What do I do? And then I have very specific practices depending on where someone is on that pain continuum.
Yes.
And it is important to, when you're holding the pain or the sensation, that we don't have to label it. We often, humans often have this need to understand it, to label it, to name it. It's just our ego wanting to have some control and some footing in our conscious awareness of like, oh my God, where are we in time and space here? I don't like to float and not have that footing. So I'm going to cling to a name, to an experience, to a judgment, to a story. Like when I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I was so relieved because so many doctors were saying it was in my head. Like I was crazy, go to a therapist, and therapists like, there's clearly something wrong, go to your doctor. And so for me, the first step for me was to receive the stamp, the diagnosis. And then the second step was to unlearn it.
Yes.
To say, I am not this diagnosis any longer. I am not this pain pattern any longer. And so a trick I have before we go into an experience is to, rather than saying my migraine, my back pain, the pressure in my head, my pressure, my anger, my stomach ache, my whatever, my Lyme disease, my cancer, my whatever, my fibromyalgia, that instead we consciously create space between our identity and this sensation or diagnosis. And so I like to say the migraine, the cancer, the fibromyalgia, the pain, the knee, instead of my bad knee. No, the knee. I love my knee. Thank you, knee, for carrying me so far. You're sharing something with me. And so that's just a little fun thing to begin to play with, and catching yourself of how you may be identifying with a big pain or a big sensation that's like got you in bed or got you with an intense diagnosis, or even with the subtle stuff that it's so easy with the subtle stuff to ignore it. It's harder to ignore the in the bed migraine. And that's where it gets a little sneaky. Like we'll just override.
Yes.
And we won't really address it until maybe it builds a little bit more, or then it starts to impact something else in our life. And now it's like getting more painful, whether that's emotionally or physically or psychologically, and then we'll start to address it. And I want to invite people to address things before they're in crisis.
Yes.
I can deal with crisis. Unfortunately, I'm really good at that. Or fortunately for the people I work with, I worked in the emergency room for a while as an EMT. I can do crisis. I can do like spirit triage. And I like to empower people to prevent the crisis by really getting to the root of things early.
It's an essential tool, as I see it, and I'm sure you see it, to be able to navigate from the inside out, navigating, starting here, feeling into what's here.
That brings up
breath.
Something, the breath, yes.
Breath,
it brings up
like
something so important. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm okay.
Yeah, what came up, I just feel so excited to speak to. It feels so important, is that this is also an invitation to do that when it's emotional. When someone has had a situation, a kind of trauma that may on the outside be done to them, like a rape or an armed robbery or getting beaten up by a loved one, or sexual abuse, molestation. It's really easy to become a victim of what someone did to you. Yes. And I experienced a date rape when I was young. Actually, when I was 16, that was a heavy year for me. It's a big wake up year for me. And so it's so important to honor that, yes, there was a circumstance, an energy, a situation. I by no means blame the survivor of that trauma. And I also acknowledge that even in myself, I had to have something in my field of energy that allowed that particular trauma in that moment to come to me as a teacher, as an educational spiritual experience, even if it was horrific and a physical trauma or a car accident or a rape or a whatever that is. And that is not to blame you, the listener, who may have had that. But what it is intended to do is to elevate our consciousness, to awaken to how we are co-creating our world. And can we move into a coherency, into collaboration with the divine, with the collective, with our own biochemistry, with the ecosystem all around us in a new way. I went through those traumas because of the imprints I received from my family of origin. Not to blame anyone. I made certain choices and was put into, I don't want to say put in a certain situations, but my unconscious put me into certain situations for a reason. And when I can honor that and also love and forgive myself through it, then I'm no longer a victim. And then I am developing the capacity to work with that emotional discord and the trauma and how my nervous system is responding that can feel like it's out of control. I experienced PTSD in the past because of some trauma I've been through. I've walked that path as well, and I've also overcome it and have moved through it, not away from it, but through it and to the other side of it. And so I think it's really important to also just speak to any of the listeners who might have the emotional trauma that's harder to see, and that this applies to those situations as well. And also the experience I'm going to share applies to those experiences as well. And so I want to share tools with all of you so that you can have something new in your toolbox and be more empowered in your own body and your own life.
So now I would love for you to share an experience that these folks can, and of course I will experience as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Super. So if you're listening, I'll invite you to please close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths with me, and breathe that breath all the way to the bottom of your feet if you can. So seated or laying down, closing your eyes, 3 deep breaths beginning now, inviting that breath all the way to the bottom of your feet. And releasing the breath either through your nose, your nostrils, or your mouth. And just notice if a sound wants to come out. When you release the breath, allow that sound to come out. Last breath. And now, if you have a physical pain or heaviness or discomfort or an old injury or tension, tightness in your physical body, connect to that. And when I say connect to that, I mean feel it. Go to it in your mind's eye, using your imagination, travel in your body and find it. And then just stand next to it or sit next to it or lay next to it. Be with it for just a moment. And if you don't have the physical sensation, but you have an emotional sensation or a trauma or a trigger that you're aware of, or something horrible happened to you, then connect with that in this moment. Be with it. Invite that energy in. And that can feel a little scary, but I'm going to be with you through it. You're not alone. Next, I'll invite you to walk into the pain, the sensation, the tension, the discomfort, the emotional stress, trigger, trauma, to walk into it as if you're walking into a room. You can open the door of that trauma, you can open the door of that injury, and walk into it as if you're walking into a room. And notice what the lighting is like in that room. Are the lights on? Is it dark? Do you need a headlamp or a flashlight to illuminate it? Use your imagination. Is there a candle burning in the room? Is there a fire in the fireplace? Check out this room. What's it like? Is it furnished? What's the temperature of this room? Is it warm? Is it moist? Is it chilly? What's the floor like that you're standing on? Is it soft? Is it hard? Is it smooth? Is it bumpy? What are the walls of this room like? Are they painted a certain color? Are they made of stone, wood, tapestries? And what's the ceiling like? Is there a color? Can you notice a texture? Be in this room. How does being in this room cause you to feel emotionally? Notice it. Don't need to attach to it, especially if it's something like fear or anger or sadness or terror. Be a silent observer of this. Notice that this is an emotion that arises in you, but do your best to press the pause button on any story that might be arising around that. Next, take that emotion that you just noticed and discover where you feel that emotion in your physical body. Breathe into the emotion. Allow it to guide you to where it's held in your physical body. And as if there's a room within a room, you can enter into this part of your physical body. And instantly, the room that you're standing in becomes this part of your physical body. How has it changed? Often there'll be something that will attract you. It'll attract your attention. It'll cause your eyes or your ears to become stimulated, or another sensation. Notice that. What draws you in? There's something here. This is an opportunity to listen to your own ecosystem of your being, to your body and your soul. And if nothing draws you, that's okay. Continue to be present, heightening your awareness around the emotion and how it may feel in this part of your body. Is there tension? Is it expansive? Is there discomfort? Is there a color that goes with this emotion and this part of your body? Is there a shape? Does the emotion have a shape? Next, I invite you to connect with the part of you that first ever felt this particular emotion. It may or may not be associated with the trauma or an accident or a situation or a person. It could be, but it may not be. So allow your unconscious to travel back in time of your life and even a past life to the first time you experienced this emotion. And as if you're sitting in the movie theater of your mind as a silent observer, you can watch the movie screen of your mind show what was going on with that younger part of you. How old was that part of you? Where is that part of you? In a bedroom, outside in nature, in a school classroom? Where are you in that moment when you first experienced that emotion? Guess your age, do your best. And now, as that silent observer, I invite you to intend with your mind and your heart and your entire being to connect with your highest adult self. And using your imagination, you bring this highest embodiment of your adult self to this younger part of you who may be struggling, who may be stressed, who may be traumatized, who may be having a very strong emotional life experience. And observe this part of you, the younger part. You know this part of you best. Identify what was this part of you, what were this part of you unmet needs, what were his or her unmet needs in that moment. And then doing your very best as you stand in your highest adult self, embodying the perfect balance of the masculine and feminine. Show up as a parent to this younger part of yourself and help this younger part get his or her needs met using your imagination. Do they need safe touch, a hug? Do they need to be removed from a particular situation? Do they need to play outside? Do they need a teddy bear or a puppy or a kitten to cuddle? Do they just need to be witnessed and held in a space of compassion and love while they express an emotion? There's no right or wrong answer. Keep using your imagination and one by one, doing your best, meet the needs of this younger part of you while simultaneously modeling for them to learn new strategies to meet their own needs. Sometimes you may need to develop a little more trust first. This is okay. The younger part of you might be afraid or mad and may not immediately trust this higher part of yourself. That's okay. You understand better than anyone else what this younger part needs to build that trust, and you can offer it in this moment, right now. As you notice subtle shifts in the younger part of you, maybe it's energetic, maybe it's their body language opens more to you. Maybe they're already talking with you and sharing their stress or their struggle, needing to get it out. Maybe they're already asking you for something very specific. Maybe they've taken you by the hand and looked you deep in the eyes and silently connected and welcomed your adult presence to guide them. Whatever has unfolded for you, using your imagination in connection and collaboration with your highest truth and self. Trust this. And if you need more time, you can revisit this and play with it more. And at the end of the process, whether you do more later or we close in this moment, which we're going to do, I invite you to take this younger part of yourself in your imagination and bring this part of you into your heart as if it dissolves like a mist into your being. And it instantly integrates into your soul, aligning and growing up into your higher self. Allowing this new part to rejoin the other parts of your soul. Remembering your wholeness. I invite you to take 3 more breaths deep into your feet, and on the exhale, allowing any sound that wants to move through you to do so. First breath. Second breath. Third breath. Having gratitude for the younger part of you or parts of you that chose to show up today. Having gratitude for the parts of your body that showed themselves to you. Having gratitude for the pain or the stress or the situation, trauma that allowed this intimate reconnection to a piece of you to unfold. Feeling the gratitude filling the trillions of cells in your body via a color or a sound or a visual. Gently, lovingly come up to a seated position, or if you are seated, begin to open your eyes, wiggling your fingers and your toes as you join us again on this call. And I thank you. And so it is. Blessed be.
Yes. Thank you.
So it is.
Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful journey.
How was that for you, Grayce?
Oh, it was wonderful. And I just, in closing here, because we are coming to our end, and so lovely to end in this place. But is there anything else you want to add? I mean, we're great. Just, I mean, this has been so rich. So it's really only if you're inspired, anything more.
Yes, there is something that's coming through, and it's this idea of forgiveness. and self-love and self-compassion. I think many people that I speak with have a tendency to forget that we're here on the planet not necessarily to learn how to love, but to be love. Coming back to forgiveness, coming back to self-love, I believe, is the key that opens a doorway to a new way of being and embodying our wholeness and our light on the planet right now.
Yes.
That's all I would like to add. Thank you for allowing that.
I was holding an angel.
Oh,
Like,
oh,
angel. Angel.
oh, thank you. Mwah.
So,
Oh.
thank you so much for being here. Everyone, this audience, thank you for sharing. What a special, beautiful time we've enjoyed with you, Kristin, Grayce, and oh, I just, many blessings to our audience. And I wish for you a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day, life.
Thank you, Grayce. Thank you for having me and for allowing me to share this. And thank you, everyone listening, for diving in and sharing in this with us. Please find me online. I'm at guthappyketo.com, as well as my full name, which is spelled in an interesting way, KristinGrayceMcGary.com, KristinGrayceMcGary.com. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Be well, everyone.
Blessings. Be
Take
well.
care.
Bye for now.
Bye.